Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving headfirst into the ketogenic diet. You've likely heard about it, right? It's that diet that's very low carb, moderate protein, and really quite high in fat.
Yeah, the macros are pretty specific, usually around, what, 55 to 60% fat?
Exactly. And then 35% protein, leaving just this tiny slice, like 5 to 10%, for carbs.
Which, on a standard 2,000-calorie diet, translates to maybe 20 to 50 grams of carbs a day, sometimes even less.
Right. Really quite low.
And for you, our listener, the learner, we know you want to get a solid grasp on this quickly without getting totally overwhelmed by all the science.
Definitely. Think of this deep dive as your shortcut. We want to get you the essentials on keto.
We've looked at a bunch of sources, health websites, some medical resources too, to get a pretty balanced picture.
And our mission today is, well, straightforward. Pull out the key stuff. What is keto? How does it actually work in the body?
What can you eat?
Yeah.
What should you probably avoid?
Yeah, and the potential benefits, the good stuff. But also, critically, the potential risks or downsides. We need to cover those too.
Absolutely. So let's jump in.
Okay, so first things first, what is keto at its core? And how does it make the body change its energy source like that?
Well, the fundamental principle is you dramatically cut your carbohydrate intake, like really drastically.
Right.
And this forces your body to find another fuel. That fuel becomes fat.
Right.
When your carb intake drops so low, your body enters this metabolic state called ketosis.
Ketosis. It sounds quite technical. What's actually going on inside us then?
Well, in ketosis, your body stops relying primarily on glucose, which you get from carbs, for energy. Instead, your liver starts breaking down fats from your diet and also your stored body fat.
Okay.
And this process creates molecules called ketones. Think of them as a backup fuel source.
Like a plan B for energy.
Yeah, exactly. Your body uses them during fasting too, or maybe very long exercise bouts. But on keto, they become plan A. They become the main source.
And these ketones, they fuel what?
Yeah.
The brain, muscles.
Both, actually. The liver makes ketones, and they can fuel the brain, which normally loves glucose. And your muscles also start using fat more directly for energy.
Interesting. So less sugar, more fat burning. How does that affect, hunger levels? Because that's always a big deal when changing how you eat.
That's a really key point. It ties into insulin. On a typical high-carb diet, your insulin levels spike after you eat carbs, then they fall.
Right, the sugar rush and crash.
Yeah, and those fluctuations can actually make you feel hungry again sooner. But on keto, because you're eating so few carbs, insulin levels tend to stay much lower and more stable.
Ah, so no big spikes and dips.
Exactly. And that stable, lower level of insulin might naturally lead to you eating fewer calories overall, maybe just because you don't feel as hungry.
So the lack of carbs itself kind of changes the hunger signals. That's fascinating. How low do carbs need to be to actually trigger this ketosis?
Generally, you need to get under 50 grams of net carbs per day. Often, people aim for under 20 grams to be sure.
Net carbs. Right, that's total carbs minus the fiber.
Correct, because fiber isn't really digested and used for energy in the same way. So yeah, under 50 gram, but ideally closer to 20 gram net carbs is the target for most people to get into ketosis reliably.
Okay, 20 grams. That's a tiny amount compared to a standard diet. Does the body just flip a switch, or does it take time?
It usually takes a few days. It's not instant. Your body has to sort of ramp up the machinery for using fat and ketones.
A few days for the transition.
Yeah. And another thing to keep in mind for you, the learner, is protein intake. Eating too much protein can actually interfere sometimes.
Really? How?
Well, the body can convert excess protein into glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. And if you're making too much glucose that way, it can hinder getting into or staying in ketosis.
Got it. So it's not just low carb, it's also moderate protein, high fat. Okay. We're telling the body, no more easy sugar, burn fat, instead producing ketones. This obviously changes the shopping list completely. What are the main foods to eat on keto?
Let's start there. You're looking at things like meat, red meat, steak, ham, sausage, bacon, chicken, turkey. These are staples.
Okay, lots of meat options.
Fatty fish are great too. Salmon, trout, tuna, mackerel. Good fats, B vitamins, omega-3s, all beneficial.
And eggs. I hear eggs are very keto friendly.
Oh yes, eggs are perfect. Especially whole eggs, maybe pastured or omega-3 enriched if you can find them.
Bacon and eggs sounds pretty good for a diet. What about dairy? Is that in or out?
Generally in, but with some nuances. Butter and cream, especially heavy cream, are good sources of fat. Grass-fed options might contain more CLA, that's conjugated linoleic acid.
CLA. What's the thinking there?
Some research hints it might help with fat loss, But, it's worth remembering, high-fat dairy is high in saturated fat. The American Heart Association advises limiting that. So there's still some debate about long-term heart health effects.
Okay, so moderation and maybe choosing grass-fed. What about cheese?
Cheese is usually a go-to. Unprocessed types like cheddar, goat, cream cheese, blue cheese, mozzarella, lots of options. They also have CLA. There was even a study suggesting ricotta might help maintain muscle mass as we age.
Interesting. So plenty of animal products. What if you want some plant-based fats and foods?
Absolutely. Nuts and seeds are key. Almonds, walnuts, flax, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds. They offer healthy fats and fiber, which helps with feeling full.
Fiber is good.
Definitely. And nut seeds are linked to reduced risk of various diseases. But portion control is important. But do have carbs and calories, so you can't just eat handfuls nonstop.
Right. Got to watch the amounts. What about oils?
Healthy oils are crucial. Extra virgin olive oil is excellent, especially for dressings or lower heat cooking. Avocado oil and coconut oil are good choices too, often for higher heat.
And avocados themselves. Olives.
Big yes to both. Avocados are packed with healthy fats and fiber, very low net carbs, linked to better heart health markers too. Olives also fit well, high in fat, low carb, and contain oleuropein, which has anti-inflammatory properties.
Okay, good fats covered. Now, vegetables. Which ones work on keto? Because you can't just eat any vegetable.
Correct. You focus on low carb ones. Leafy greens are fantastic. Spinach, kale, lettuce, all that. Packed with vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. Dark greens are great for vitamin K and iron.
So salad base is good.
Yeah.
What else?
Peppers, all colors are fine. Great source of vitamin C. Summer squash, like zucchini, is really versatile. People make zoodles out of it as a pasta substitute.
Ah, the spiralizer comes out.
Yeah, exactly. Then you have broccoli, cauliflower, which is amazing. You can make rice or mash out of it. Mushrooms, cucumber, green beans, eggplant, tomatoes in moderation.
Tomatoes are okay. I thought they were fruit.
Botanically, yes. But nutritionally, they fit okay in moderation on keto. Also, spaghetti squash, another pasta alternative. Jicama or turnips can sometimes stand in for potatoes. Brussels sprouts, celery, okra, lots of non-starchy options.
That's actually a wider range than I might have guessed. What about drinks?
Milk,
Well,
coffee. Unsweetened plant-based milks, like almond, soy, or coconut milk, are usually okay in moderation. But watch out for oat milk. It tends to be higher in carbs.
Okay, avoid oat milk, coffee, and tea.
Unsweetened coffee and tea are fine. Caffeine itself has potential benefits. Adding a splash of heavy cream is usually acceptable, but skip the sugary lattes or those light versions which often have hidden carbs.
Right.
Unsweetened sparkling water is a good soda alternative. Just check labels for sneaky fruit juice or sweeteners. Oh, and ghee clarified butter are fine too. Virtually zero carbs.
Wow, okay, so quite a list of things to eat. Now, the flip side. What are the big things to avoid or seriously limit?
The most obvious category is sugary foods. Soda, fruit juice, most smoothies, cake, ice cream, candy, basically anything with lots of added sugar is out.
Makes sense. What else?
Grains and starches are a major no-go. That means wheat products, bread, pasta, cereal, also rice, tortillas, muffins, bagels, pancakes, all too high in carbs.
So standard bakery items are out. Fruit.
Most fruit, yeah, because of the natural sugars. The exception is small portions of low-carb berries, like strawberries, blackberries, blueberries. They offer nutrients, so a small amount might be okay sometimes.
Berries in moderation, but generally limit fruit. What about beans? Legumes?
Beans, peas, lentils, chickpeas, generally too high in carbs for strict keto.
Okay, and root vegetables. Potatoes, carrots.
Right, potatoes, sweet potatoes, carrots, parsnips, beets. They're starchier and higher in carbs, so usually avoided or very limited.
What about things like low-fat products?
Be careful with those. Low-fat or diet products often add sugar or carbs to make up for the lack of fat and flavor. So low-fat mayo, dressings, condiments might be surprisingly carb-heavy.
Sneaky carbs.
Exactly. Same goes for many common sauces. BBQ sauce, honey mustard, teriyaki, ketchup often have a lot of sugar.
Good point. Unhealthy fats.
Yeah. Avoid processed vegetable oils like soybean or corn oil. Stick to the healthy fats we mentioned earlier. Generally problematic. Beer is full of carbs. Wine can vary. Dry wines are better than sweet ones, but still contain carbs. Liquor might be lower carb itself, but mixers are usually sugary. Sweet cocktails are definitely out.
So drinking needs careful consideration. What about sugar-free diet foods?
Even those are often discouraged. They might contain sugar alcohols, can affect some people, or artificial sweeteners. It's generally better to stick to whole, unprocessed foods.
Okay. Any specific veggies to watch out for besides the root veg?
Onions in large amounts can add up in carbs. Certain winter squashes like acorn or butternut squash are higher carb than summer squash, and corn definitely higher in carbs.
Got it. So it really involves cutting out those major carb sources prevalent in, well, most typical diets. Now, if someone makes these big changes, what are the potential benefits people talk about? Weight loss is usually top of the list, right?
It is, and there's quite a bit of research suggesting keto can be effective for weight loss, maybe even more so than traditional low-fat diets, at least in the shorter term.
Why is that?
Several potential reasons. The higher fat and protein can lead to increased satiety, feeling fuller for longer, which might mean people naturally eat fewer calories without consciously restricting.
Less hunger is a big plus.
Definitely. Some reviews suggest slightly better long-term weight loss compared to low-fat diets, too. One study specifically in older adults found significantly more fat loss on keto.
So maybe preserving muscle better.
Possibly. And the metabolic shifts to ketones themselves, lower blood sugar, improved insulin sensitivity are all thought to play a role. There's even limited research suggesting keto might slightly increase the number of calories burned. Very low-carb approaches might just have an edge over moderate carb reduction for weight loss.
Okay, so weight loss is a potential biggie. What about other health areas? Blood sugar control comes up a lot.
Absolutely. This is another major area where keto seems promising, especially for type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome. Studies show improvements in glycemic control, meaning better, more stable blood sugar. Also, potentially reduced need for diabetes medications and improved insulin sensitivity. That older study showing a 75% improvement in insulin sensitivity was quite remarkable.
Wow.
Even the American Diabetes Association acknowledges that reducing overall carb intake is a valid strategy for improving blood sugar. The dramatic lowering of insulin levels on keto is likely the key driver here.
That sounds really significant for people managing diabetes. Now, heart health. That's always a question with high-fat diets.
It is, and it's a bit complex. On the one hand, keto might improve several heart disease risk factors, things like reducing body fat, potentially increasing HDL, the good cholesterol.
HDL often goes up.
It often does, yes. Also, potentially lower diastolic blood pressure and obviously the improved blood sugar we just talked about.
But what about LDL, the bad cholesterol?
That's where it gets nuanced. Some studies show LDL might decrease, but others show it can actually increase in some people on keto.
So it's not a guaranteed improvement for LDL.
Not guaranteed, no. It really underscores the importance of which fats you eat on keto. Focusing on healthy fats, avocados, olive oil, nuts, fatty fish, and getting enough fiber from low-carb veggies seems crucial for heart health.
So the quality of the diet matters hugely.
Immensely. There's also evidence linking keto to lower markers of inflammation, which is relevant for cardiovascular health, too. So potential benefits, but the type of fat is key.
Okay. Beyond metabolism, any other areas? I've heard whispers about brain health.
Yes, neurological disorders. Historically, keto was actually developed back in the 1920s to treat epilepsy, especially in children who didn't respond to drugs. It can significantly reduce seizure frequency.
Fascinating history. Does it require special supervision?
Oh, absolutely. For epilepsy, it needs close medical guidance and often specific supplements. But now researchers are exploring its potential for other conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, even sleep disorders.
What's the theory there?
The idea is that ketones might offer a neuroprotective effect, maybe shielding brain cells from damage. But, and this is important, much more research is needed. There are ongoing studies, like at KU Medical Center, looking into keto for Alzheimer's and traumatic brain injury, with some early promising signs.
So an active area of research, what about something like PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome?
There's potential there too, primarily linked back to insulin. High insulin levels can contribute to the hormonal imbalances in PCOS.
Right.
By lowering insulin, keto might help improve things like androgen levels. One study showed women with PCOS on a low-carb diet had lower glucose, fasting insulin, and testosterone, plus better insulin sensitivity.
Interesting connection. And cancer, I've seen that mentioned.
It's being explored as an additional therapy, potentially alongside standard treatments, not as a replacement.
Okay, an adjunct therapy.
Yes. The thinking is that lower insulin and glucose levels might make it harder for some types of tumors to grow, since many cancer cells rely heavily on glucose. But again, this is very much still in the research phase. More robust trials are definitely needed.
Understood. Early days for cancer research. Lastly, metabolic syndrome as a whole.
Keto seems quite effective there. Metabolic syndrome is that cluster of issues: high blood pressure, high blood sugar, unhealthy cholesterol levels, excess abdominal fat.
Right, increasing risk for heart disease and diabetes.
Exactly. Studies show keto can lead to significant improvements across these markers. Some trial participants even stopped meeting the criteria for metabolic syndrome after following the diet. You see improvements in blood pressure, glucose, triglycerides, HDL. Although, as we said, LDL might go up for some.
So, quite a range of potential benefits being studied. But clearly, more research is needed for many of these, especially long term. Let's shift to the risks. What are the potential downsides or side effects people should know about?
Well, in the short term, there's the infamous keto flu.
Ah, yes, I've heard of that. What does it feel like?
It's basically your body adapting. Symptoms can include dizziness, fatigue, maybe headache, some digestive upset like diarrhea or constipation, sometimes increased hunger initially, sleep problems, nausea, even decreased exercise performance for a bit.
Doesn't sound pleasant. How long does it last?
Usually just a few days up to a week,
Yeah.
typically. As your body gets used to burning fat, it tends to resolve.
Any way to minimize it?
Starting with a more gradual carb reduction might help ease the transition. Also, paying attention to electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium is really important. Losing water weight initially can deplete these.
So maybe adding a bit more salt or specific supplements.
Possibly, but it's best to get advice from a doctor on that. Don't just start taking electrolyte supplements without guidance. So yeah, be prepared for a possible adjustment period.
Keto flu noted. What about longer-term concerns? If someone stays on keto for months or years?
This is where we need more long-term data, honestly. But potential concerns include, as we discussed, the impact on cholesterol levels, especially LDL, if the diet quality isn't good.
Right, the healthy fats point again.
Exactly. Kidney stones are a less common but possible risk mentioned in some literature. Metabolic acidosis is a theoretical concern, though less likely with dietary ketosis than, say, diabetic ketoacidosis.
Okay.
Nutrient deficiencies are a real possibility if the diet isn't well planned, because it's quite restrictive. It can be hard to get enough of certain vitamins and minerals.
Like maybe fiber, certain B vitamins, magnesium.
Potentially, yes. Things commonly found in fruits, whole grains, and legumes that are restricted on keto. There are also theoretical concerns about excess fat in the liver long term or low protein in the blood, but these seem less common and need more study.
What about the psychological aspect? It's very restrictive.
That's a really important point. The restrictive nature, sometimes combined with a focus on rapid weight loss, could potentially contribute to a disordered relationship with food for some individuals. Rapid weight loss itself can also impact metabolism and food perception long term.
So, mental health and relationship with food are factors to consider. Are there specific people who absolutely should not do keto?
Yes, definitely. It's generally not recommended for pregnant or breastfeeding women due to their unique nutritional needs. Most children shouldn't be on it either, unless specifically for medically supervised epilepsy treatment.
Okay. Who else?
People with pre-existing kidney disease. Individuals with a history of or high risk for eating disorders.
Makes sense. Any medication interactions?
A big one is certain diabetes medications, specifically SGLT2 inhibitors. Combining those with keto increases the risk of a serious condition called diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA.
That sounds serious.
It is. So the absolute bottom line here is talk to your doctor before starting, especially if you have any health condition, type 1 diabetes, heart issues, high blood pressure, or if you take medications for anything, particularly diabetes or blood pressure meds.
Doctor consultation is non-negotiable.
Absolutely. For someone who is obese and has other health problems, gradual changes under medical supervision might be much safer than jumping straight into strict keto.
Crystal clear advice. So, assuming someone has consulted their doctor and keto seems like a reasonable option, what are some practical tips for getting started and actually sticking with it?
First, nail down that carb goal, usually under 20 grams of net carbs daily. Build your meals around protein, then add healthy fats for flavor and fullness.
Focus on whole foods.
Yes, prioritize whole, unprocessed, keto-friendly foods as much as possible. Drink plenty of water, unsweetened tea or coffee, watch beverage carbs, even milk or cream can add up.
What about things like intermittent fasting? Does that help?
Some people find it helps them get into ketosis faster, like the 168 method, eating in an 8-hour window, fasting for 16. But mostly, listen to your body. Eat when you're hungry.
How do you know if you're in ketosis?
You can measure ketones with urine strips, breathalyzers, or blood meters. Or you might notice symptoms like increased thirst, dry mouth, more frequent urination, maybe reduced hunger after the initial phase.
Planning seems important too.
Crucial. Plan meals, read labels diligently, maybe pack your own food for work or outings. When eating out, strategize, look for meat, fish, eggs, ask for extra veggies instead of starchy sides, add healthy fats like olive oil or avocado.
Good tips. Anything else for motivation or tracking?
Taking before photos or measurements can be motivating, and connecting with others, online groups, forums, newsletters can provide support and practical advice. Preparation and community can make a big difference.
Okay, really helpful practical stuff. What about supplements? Are they needed on keto?
Not strictly required, but some can be helpful. MCT oil is popular. It's easily converted to ketones for energy.
Right, medium chain triglycerides.
Yes. Electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium might be needed, especially at the start, to manage the keto flu symptoms and fluid shifts.
Okay. Anything else common?
Caffeine can help with energy and performance. Some people use exogenous ketones, basically ketone supplements, though their long-term benefit isn't fully clear. Creatine is good if you're exercising, and whey protein can help ensure you meet your protein target if you struggle with whole foods alone.
But again, probably best to discuss supplements with a doctor.
Always the best approach.
Mm.
They can assess your individual needs based on your diet and health status.
This has been incredibly thorough, a real deep dive. To wrap it all up, what are the absolute key takeaways you'd want the learner to walk away with?
I think the main points are, keto is very low carb, high fat. It forces your body into ketosis, burning fat for fuel. This can lead to benefits like weight loss and better blood sugar control, and it's being studied for other conditions.
Right.
But it's restrictive. It comes with potential short-term side effects, the keto flu. And there are still questions about long-term risks and effects that need more research.
And the most critical piece of advice.
It's not for everyone, and it might not be sustainable long-term for many. So absolutely, positively talk to your healthcare provider before starting. They need to weigh the potential benefits against the risks for you, considering your health history and any medications.
Consulting a professional is key, maybe even a dietitian.
Yes, getting a referral to a registered dietitian who understands ketogenic diets can be incredibly helpful for creating a plan that's nutritionally sound and safe for you.
Excellent final advice. Okay, and to leave you, our listener, with something to chew on, considering the complexities, the ongoing debates about long-term effects, how might future research really clarify keto's role, not just for specific conditions, but for our overall long-term health and well-being? Where does this path lead next?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.